You see, in recent years, everything's gone back to dwarf hops, or down to dwarf hops, which is virtually like a fence, the dwarf hop. But people that are in hops, conventional tall hops, are quite happy to expand now, because obviously because of microbreweries, and the craft beer at the moment is all the rage. So obviously English hops are in vogue again, as you might say. Is that okay? We're doing all right.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Did you get all that, Rick?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, great.
Well, I followed my father into the business. I've been putting up wirework for 40 odd years now, I suppose. And again, it was in the village that I lived in at Newtown. There were 4 people who were capable of putting up wirework in the old days. But of course we've dwindled and dwindled, because obviously hops have dwindled and dwindled, and we haven't got the infrastructure we used to have. Obviously we rely heavily on foreign labour now, whereas the building of the wirework is a bit more technical. And fortunately I am the only contractor left that does it full time now. There are 1 or 2 farms that have got their own contractor, but I'm the sort of major one in I suppose Worcestershire, Herefordshire, and there is absolutely nobody in Kent and who really know. They've all died out and got old and either passed away or retired, and that's the story really of the contracting side of things. But I've had over the years several. I mean, some years I'm very busy, some years I'm not quite so busy. But we've sort of kept going. I've always had two or three people work for me. But my father's been gone now 10, 11, 12 years, I suppose. He was the boss, and I just followed on and became his partner. And I think, when did I start? 72 or something like that, 70. So I've got a bit of experience.
So what about your son?
Oh, my son is he's slightly different. He's organises festivals. But he does help occasionally. But he I don't think he will follow on into the business. He's 30 now, so he does help. But so I mean, as it is now with here at Wills, we put up six patches, 6 hop gardens, and the boys are learning all the time. They're sort of learning the bones of the job. But maybe one day I'll take an apprentice on. Rob is my apprentice, and the two before him were in their 70s. So
have you thought about doing that, getting on, training somebody up, or do you feel? Do you feel like it's it sounds a bit of a weird thing, but do you feel slightly responsible for training somebody up to take it on, or do you think, well, I've done my bit?
Yeah. I mean, I am retiring age this year, so I'm thinking, well, do I really want the problems nowadays are obviously health and safety and all that sort of thing. It's a tricky one, I've obviously the people that I employ are experienced people that I've known for years who have worked for me for a long time, so I don't have to worry about them. Whereas with the employment the way it is these days, it's you have to charge so much to an apprentice is out of the question really, because of the price issue, which is a shame, but as I say, it's I wouldn't call it rocket science, my job, but it's a stress and strain thing, where you have to pull wires one way and then the other to keep everything upright. It is quite technical, but it doesn't look it, because everybody that says, "Oh, you string the ops, do you?" That's all they say, and even my best friends haven't got a clue, what how much. And they're farmers. They don't. They're just apple growers or chicken growers. And they've got no idea what I do for a living, really.
I think it's like putting up your run of beans.
Yeah. Yeah, they usually fall down the road, don't they?
So tell us a little bit then how this works. What do you have to think about, and what are the technicalities?
Well, the obviously as you can see with the way the plants are, the first thing is to find your square, because everything works off a square. You get your rows measured out. We have a site square that we square out with, and then a marking outline with a set distance. These plants are set at 4 feet, 4 by 9, 4 feet by 9 feet. You see, being old, I can't go metric, so we stick with 4 by 9. And then you sort of peg. We mark it out, and then we bore our poles in, or get a digger to put all the poles in equidistance. And again, if you stand in a certain position, you can see all these poles are in line no matter where you look. If you're stood square, you can see all these poles are in line. And then we dig in. These are what we call anchor blocks. In the ground there, there is a third of a sleeper, and those bars are 5 foot long, so they're all dug into the ground every 18 foot. So it's all sort of based on a square to keep it upright. And then obviously all our poles are 20 feet long, and we have an anchor. This is what we call an anchor. You make your anchor. Eventually all this will have wire on. We've only wired part of it. As you can see, there'll be 2 wires to each row, and then once the wires are on there and I've strained it all up tight, then we go in and tie it all together. These are what we call cross wires that go across the field, which is fairly obvious. Goes across the field. The number 6s run down the field, and then they're tied together, wrapped with wire. And then after that we measure. Every bay has got 9 plants in it, so we put 9 hooks on. That's top hooks, which is a little hook that goes on the top to hold the string. And then you've got your peg in the floor. You can't see them, but there's some thing called a ground peg. I think I could probably find you one. You see, this is what you call a ground peg, and every root has a peg to it. And then when they string from the peg to the top hook at the top, and a gang of people come in to do that. You have a ball of string and you go up and down and fill the row up. And that's how, basically the structure works. This is the crop that we set up last year, that field there. Okay. So the stringing is done in the spring, March, April. And then the hops grow up obviously between then and September. I mean, I don't know whether you'll be around in hop picking, but it's quite an interesting.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we'll be filming.
Oh, we'll be.
Yeah, yeah. It could be a very interesting hop picking, because, as you can see, the shed is a huge picking machine, and everything's got to be up and ready in another month. So everything in that shed's got to be ready to go. Whereas these hops that are in here, they won't be picked this season. They will just be left to grow on, to take root, and then next year away they'll go, and they'll be the same as the ones in the other fields.
Do you ever get involved in the picking side of things, or you?
Oh, used to. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Well, like I say, I was born in a crib.
Oh, were you? Oh, come on,
So,
tell us about
so
that.
they say. Well, obviously my mother and father were both involved. My dad in hop picking. He used to work on a hop farm, so I suppose the first thing I can remember is sort of holding on a bagger, which was a hop pocket, to press the hops when I was 4 or 5. So I've been around a lot of hop pickings. I've probably worked on maybe 10 or 15 different farms in the county during hop picking, and now for my sins I go around and take samples. So I go to 80% of the growers, and I cut a little sample out. I don't know, that would be interesting. I could bring you some pictures to show you that if you wanted to have or even in Oppicon, I'll be here taking wool samples probably.
Was that to show to the buyers?
Yes, that's it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I don't know whether you know anything about it, but we take 2 samples in every 10 pockets or bales as we call them now.
Okay.
So that's my hop picking job. but before that I've done it all. I've done everything from being in the field cutting the bines in front, to being on the trailer pulling, being in the machine shed helping with the machine. I've helped with the drying when we used to dry 24 hours a day. I got a lot of good memories. Favourite bit was probably hop drying when we used to dry 24 hours a day. Obviously in those days we had a lot of labour, and you get the Brummies and the Welsh and the Gypsies, and it was Bishop's Room was like as big as Hereford in hop picking time. Incredible amount of people, and it was very good fun, because obviously the rest of the year is quite quiet, but you get a lot of people in Bishop's Room.
Like a big festival.
Oh yeah, that's about right.
Some would like it.
only go on for a month, It was wonderful.
So was there did everyone all mix in together, or did people?
Oh, there was a lot of fighting going on, but no, it was good fun. Yeah,
What
it was
were
good
people
fun.
fighting about then?
Well, the demon drink, I suppose, got to them.
Yeah.
But no, it was, and they'd trade horses down at Bishop's Room. Of course, it was an incredible time, really.
How old would you have been then?
When at its height, I was probably only, it was started when the Oppicon machine came around, you see. The Oppicon machine came, and of course then all the labour sort of dissipated. It just sort of went away, and you didn't need so many people. And from then it then the industry got smaller, because I suppose after the war was supposedly the biggest surge on hops, or during the war they wanted Carkey, I think, the hops for Carkey dye and things like that. So hops were a bit more, and it was a green crop then. Nowadays everything's put into isopacks and things like that, so it's pelleted mostly. A lot of the hops are pelleted, whereas it was a green crop years ago, so obviously they needed more then, because if a brewer bought say 10 pockets and he only used 8, 2 of those he would throw away because they deteriorated and they wouldn't keep, whereas nowadays they put them into isopacks and they just they can keep them forever as long as they've got them refrigerated or in the cool, and then I think all the big brewers now pellet, they just put pellets in, 10 pellets or 100 pellets, whatever they put in a brew, which is again has sort of made it so that they don't need so many in a bad time. They'll buy, but in a good time they've always got surplus, if you know what I mean. They keep them by them a bit, I suppose.
Can you tell me about the Carkey?
Well, during the war, obviously they got a lot of uniforms to make, and they must have found out that hops were good for dyeing, for the right colour dye for the uniforms. So they a lot of the hops went for dye during the war and that era.
Not for beer.
Well, and obviously I think because of the troops, to keep their morale up, I think like between the wars, I think don't quote me, but I think the op industry trebled, between the wars. It was just that it was beer was getting a bit more, and of course with the miners, the steel works and mine and steel in Birmingham and mining in Wales. It was a good thing.
Thirsty work.
Yeah.
So, what, from your perspective, and you've been in it since the sort of 70s, have you seen the kind of peaks and troughs? And
Oh yes, yeah, very much so. Yeah.
What do you think's caused that, or?
Well, it's usually a shortage, a world shortage, or whatever, and it seems the supplier that we've been in the industry together, we've come to the conclusion about every excuse me, every 7 or 8 years, you know, you have a sort of up and a down. You go about a 7 or 8 year, like the waves on the sea. You go up and then down, and it's that's about it. About every 7 or 8 years, we go from being up to down. But over, and of course, with all the new varieties that are around, years ago there were only maybe 2 or 3 varieties. But with alpha, as they call it, the alpha extract, that is, you know, there's more alpha grown, if you can understand what I mean, on less acreage. So a lot of the alpha is improved with the hops, whereas this type that Will's growing, the Fuggle, that is the old-fashioned hop. Fuggles and Goldings were the original 2 hops in this county, and that was nearly all that anybody grew. But of course now there's at least 4 varieties you can see in this field, and they are they're bringing out new varieties all the time, just trying to find the right one. And nowadays with the craft brewing, they're looking, everybody that's in it is looking for a different taste, so they, you know, it's just finding a different taste that suits.